Hi folks, in this tutorial we'll be looking at the Shattered Dominion large base detail kit. We'll be taking a different approach to the I've been stuck to the base approach that you see on the box art and going for a more Lost City look. So let's get a cup of tea and get started. For reference in this tutorial I'll be using a 90mm oval base. This is the perfect size base for putting cavalry figures on. Firstly, we're going to identify a piece of the detail that we'd like and cut it off from the sprue. Don't forget to cut away any bits of extra flash and get rid of any mould lines that may be left over. It's always worth cutting away from the piece rather than cutting right next to it. Once we have cleaned up our piece, we can decide where we want to put it on this base. I'm going for a very central look on this, but don't worry about any overlapping areas. You can always cut those off, and if the piece is too wide or too chunky, you can always break it up into smaller pieces. We're going to come in with some other materials later to make this seem much more seamless and buried. So get out the plastic glue of your choice and give it a nice even coat and give it a good old stick down. Make sure you leave plenty of time for this piece to dry. Next, we're going to come in with the hobbyist favourite, and that is good old cork. Here I've got some 3mm cork tile, and I'm just tearing pieces off and super gluing them down to the base. You want to sort of attack the edges with your finger to make the edges nice and rough. The more rough these pieces are, and the less uniform, the more natural it's going to look. And here we're using them to create some ground texture, where the floor of the wood would be, with a little clearing showing this ruined city and old artwork left to eons showing through. So this is just a matter of tearing off as many pieces as you want, breaking them up and having a play. Once you're happy with where the piece is going, stick it down. Once I was happy with my cork placement, I'm then going to come in with some slate chippings. These are going to enable us to add some variation to the ground texture, just to break it up so the cork doesn't look too unnatural when we place it onto the base. I've just taken a various sample of different sizes and shapes, and I'm going to stick these down to the base using some super glue. You can use as many or as little as you want of these, just have a play and see what you feel like. You may want to use more of these if you're using a particularly large base, but I'm just going to use a few here, considering this is just a cavalry size base. Next, I'm going to use some model filler. This one happens to be from Humbrol, but you can use any model filler that you'd like. And I'm going to use it to hide the exposed edges of the plastic basing detail. So this is going to cover up any bare bits of plastic base that are still showing, and any bits of areas over the detail that we want to show as having some ground texture over it. This makes the plastic detail that we've added onto this base look a lot more seamless, and if it's actually part of the terrain rather than just being stuck haphazardly onto the base. Finally, the last step in building this base will be to use some Stellar Mud texture paint from Games Workshop. And with this, we want to apply this with a nice even coat straight from the pot over the model filler that we've used, onto the top of the cork rocks and into any outlying bits of plastic base, such as the bits at the edge where we haven't put any rocks or filler or cork. And this step will really help sell the idea that this detail that we've added is part of a lost civilization or a lost city forgotten to eons, being uncovered by the battles that your armies are involved in. And if you want, like I've done here, you can put a bit of the texture paint over some of the exposed area details, just to really sell the it's still partly covered up by earth and mud and details. Once the texture paint has been given plenty of time to dry, this base is now ready for painting. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. It's free of charge, and you get updates on further tutorials just like this one. Thanks folks, and I'll see you in the next one.